Welcome to this explainer. Right now, Washington is locked in a seriously high-stakes legal and political standoff, and it centers on literally one of the most critical issues any government faces. We're talking about the power to wage war. We are looking at a fierce constitutional debate surrounding the U.S.-Israeli conflict with Iran. You see, this isn't just about foreign policy, it's about the fundamental checks and balances of power. And the wildest part, it all revolves around a literal ticking clock that is rapidly running out. Okay, let's dive into this. The entire debate we're unpacking today hinges on one absolutely crucial question. Can a ceasefire pause a constitutional countdown? Now, I know that sounds like a theoretical question you'd get on a law school exam, but it is playing out in real time, right now. The Trump administration and Congress are currently totally at odds over whether a pause in fighting literally stops the legal timer that limits unauthorized military action. To truly grasp why this single question is causing such a massive clash in the Senate, we first need to understand the mechanics of this timer.
So, let's look at Section 1, the rules of the game, the War Powers Resolution. Before we can even look at today's specific clash, we have to understand the specific rules that govern this political game. We've got to look at the foundational rulebook. This legislation was passed way back in 1973, and the context here is super essential. This was enacted to explicitly limit the ability of then-President Richard Nixon to continue waging war in Vietnam. Basically, Congress wanted to ensure that absolutely no president could unilaterally commit the nation to a prolonged armed conflict without, legislative oversight. It was essentially designed to force a conversation between the executive branch and Congress.
And that brings us to the most important number in this entire conflict. 60. Under the War Powers Resolution, a president has exactly 60 calendar days to terminate any use of United States Armed Forces once they've formally notified Congress of a strike or deployment. If Congress doesn't grant approval or if they don't formally declare war within those 60 days, the military action legally must end. It's a strict, hard legislative deadline completely designed to prevent endless, unauthorized conflicts.
However, the law does carve out one very specific exception to that 60-day rule. A president can get an extension of up to 30 days, but, and this is a massive, massive but, this extension is legally permitted only for the prompt removal of troops. It's not an allowance for 30 more days of combat, it is simply a grace period strictly meant for a safe and orderly withdrawal. Let's move to and see how this builds in real time. The conflict was sparked across the Middle East after the U.S. and Israel launched wide-ranging strikes on Iran, which included killing the country's supreme leader, prompting retaliatory attacks from Iran. So, day one on our constitutional clock officially started on March 2nd, when President Trump formally notified Congress of the strikes. Fast forward to day 36, which was April 7th, a senior administration official noted this was the final exchange of fire, and an early April ceasefire took effect. That brings us to Friday. Friday literally marks day 60, the exact day the legislative deadline arrives. Which brings us to Section 2. Is the clock paused? The Senate standoff.
This brings us to the absolute climax of our narrative. Is the clock actually paused? We have reached the 60-day mark, but the Trump administration argues that the deadline hasn't truly arrived. And man, this disagreement has triggered a major standoff. On one side, you have the Trump administration arguing that because a ceasefire has been in effect since early April, hostilities have officially terminated. Therefore, they say the 60-day clock is paused or stopped entirely. On the flip side, Democratic lawmakers firmly argue that the statute simply does not work that way. In their view, the law doesn't care if there's a temporary pause in shooting. 60 calendar days is 60 calendar days, and that timer just keeps running.
To really understand the administration's position, let's look at the exact words spoken during Thursday's Senate hearing. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told senators, quote, "We are in a ceasefire right now," which our understanding means the 60-day clock pauses or stops in a ceasefire. A senior administration official also echoed this, stating that for the purposes of the War Powers Resolution, the hostilities that began earlier have terminated because of this extended ceasefire.
But almost immediately, we see the rebuttal that highlights the massive legal question looming over the White House. Democratic Senator Tim Kaine pushed back during that very same hearing, stating, quote, "I do not believe the statute would support that. I think the 60 days runs maybe tomorrow, and it's going to pose a really important legal question for the administration there." You can clearly see the friction here, right? One side believes the absence of active combat freezes the legal requirement, while the other side completely believes the constitutional calendar is absolute.
Let's look at Section 3, the cost of conflict, beyond the clock.
While the legal and constitutional debate over the 60-day timer is absolutely fascinating, we really have to shift our focus to the real-world stakes here.
Why does this bureaucratic timer carry such immense global weight? And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why. Because the reality on the ground is staggering: $25 billion. During a House committee hearing, one of the Defense Secretary's top officials actually revealed that this is the estimated cost of U.S. operations in Iran so far. That's a massive financial commitment, and it underscores exactly why Congress is demanding to weigh in on whether these operations should legally continue.
But the ripples go far beyond direct military spending. The key shipping channel, the Strait of Hormuz, remains effectively closed off, which is causing severe economic impacts all around the world. Because of this closure, oil prices have increased sharply, literally hitting their highest point since 2022. On the diplomatic front, while the ceasefire holds for now, the two sides haven't actually reached a longer-term deal. However, efforts are definitely underway, with Tehran reportedly sending negotiation proposals to the U.S. through intermediaries in Pakistan. It is a highly volatile economic and diplomatic situation resting right on top of this constitutional standoff.
Which leads us to Section 4. What happens next? Congress reconsiders.
So what happens next? As the clock theoretically runs out, the focus turns entirely to the political maneuvering happening behind closed doors in the halls of Congress. Here is the current political landscape. Behind the scenes, administration officials are in active conversations with members of Congress to try and gain official congressional authorization for the war. Thus far, Democratic-led attempts in both chambers to constrain the president's actions have repeatedly failed, though Democrats are vowing to keep trying to get lawmakers on the record. Now, most Republicans have opposed these Democratic efforts. However, and this is a really crucial point, some Republicans have signaled that they might actually reconsider their positions once that 60-day period expires, meaning the actual arrival of the deadline might shift the political dynamic entirely.
To really understand the perspective of lawmakers who are firmly supporting the Pentagon's current trajectory, take a look at this quote from Republican Congressman Carlos Gimenez of Florida. He stated, quote, "When someone tells me for 47 years that they want to kill us, I think I am going to take them at their word." Gimenez and others view Iran, and particularly its nuclear program, which the U.S. and Israel claim is for developing a bomb, despite Tehran's vehement denials, as an absolute existential threat. For these lawmakers, the strategic necessity of stopping Iran completely outweighs the debate over the 60-day constitutional clock.
Which leaves us right here. We've traced the law from 1973, we've mapped out the 60-day timeline, and we've seen the massive financial and global stakes involved in this standoff between the administration and Congress. So, as Friday's deadline arrives, I want to leave you with this final, truly provocative thought. If a ceasefire can pause the legal countdown to unauthorized war, who ultimately holds the power to restart the clock? Is it the president, the Congress, or the next exchange of fire? Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on how this constitutional countdown